It was a Saturday night in Denver, early spring, the kind of evening where the sky looked like brushed steel and the wind still carried a little bite from winter. We rented a loft space downtown. Open brick walls, Edison bulbs hanging from black cords, polished concrete floors. It was all very curated, very her. She had picked the venue, the decor, the catering, even the scent of the candles, vanilla fig, because she said it felt like the right kind of expensive. I had mostly nodded through the planning, more focused on the idea of being engaged to her than on how we celebrated it. Looking back now, I don't think I ever really saw her clearly until that night. Friends flew in from out of state. Her college roommate made a slideshow. There were little place cards with quotes about love, bowls of sugared rosemary popcorn, and a playlist that felt like it was made by someone trying to bottle an Instagram moment. But everyone seemed happy, and for most of the night so did she. She was in this long, dark green dress with an open back and these thin gold straps that shimmered in the light. Her hair was curled at the ends, soft, just messy enough to look unintentional. She moved through the party like she belonged in the spotlight, greeting everyone with that warm, slightly flirtatious energy she had, the kind that drew people in without her even trying. I watched her from across the room, talking to her cousin about wedding venues, then laughing at something my best friend said. She looked perfect. Or at least, she looked like what I thought perfect was supposed to be. But then it happened, the moment I still replay in my head sometimes like a slowed-down movie scene. She had stepped away from a conversation with her sister and made her way toward the back of the loft, by the bar. I followed her glance without thinking. She was checking her phone. Nothing unusual about that. Everyone checks their phone at parties. But the way she did it was too fast, too practiced. She turned slightly away from the crowd, like she didn't want anyone to see the screen. Her thumb tapped the screen quickly, then paused. That's when I saw it. Just a flash of a name, right before she locked it. Nolan. I didn't recognize the name. It wasn't someone we knew from work. Not someone in our circle of friends. No last name. Just Nolan. A name sitting there like a clue left behind too carelessly. My stomach twisted. When I walked up behind her, she immediately tucked her phone into her clutch like it had burned her hand. Then she turned toward me with a smile that felt 2 seconds late. "There you are," she said, slipping her arm through mine. "I was starting to think you disappeared." Her tone was light, but her eyes didn't meet mine. And when I leaned in and asked if everything was okay, she said, "Of course. Why wouldn't it be?" With that sharp little edge that made it clear I'd already said too much. The rest of the night blurred. She didn't retreat, not physically. She kept laughing, kept toasting, kept grabbing people for selfies. But I could feel the distance setting in like fog. She stopped touching me unless it was for photos. She avoided eye contact. And slowly, she started redirecting the tension onto me, like I was the one ruining the evening. "You're being quiet," she said once, half laughing, half accusing, as we stood near the gift table. "I'm just taking it in," I replied, not knowing what else to say. She tilted her head and gave me this performative little pout. "You're making it weird." That's when I realized what was happening. She had flipped it. I caught something I wasn't supposed to see, and now she was framing it like I was the one acting off. It was subtle, the way she spoke just a little louder when people were nearby, the way she rolled her eyes like I was just being so sensitive. She was controlling the narrative before it even became a conversation, making sure anyone watching would assume the tension came from me. And the scary part was, it worked. People kept coming up to us, telling us how perfect we looked together, how lucky we were. "You guys are just so in sync," one of her friends gushed. "Total goals." I nodded, smiled, held her hand. But in the back of my mind, something was quietly unraveling. Every moment after that phone screen felt like I was standing behind glass, like I was watching the party happen, but I wasn't really in it anymore. I kept playing it over in my head. The name, the way she smiled, the defensiveness that slipped in when I asked about nothing in particular. I knew something was wrong. Maybe I'd known it for a while. There had been signs before. A few months earlier, she'd started getting more polished. New clothes, new skincare routines, suddenly obsessed with spin classes and bar. She chalked it up to wedding prep, and I believed her. I thought maybe it was just stress or excitement, or maybe she wanted to look her best for the engagement photos. Then came the changes to her phone. New passcode, notifications silenced, screen always face down. I joked about it once, saying, "What, are you in the CIA now?" She laughed, but it was forced. "I'm just trying to disconnect more," she said. "You should try it." Except she wasn't disconnected. If anything, she was more distracted than ever. She started spending long hours at work, even on weekends. I asked about it, and she gave me vague answers. "We're under a deadline," or "the new VP's making everyone crazy." I didn't push back. I trusted her. Or maybe I didn't want to know what I might find if I did. But something shifted after that night at the loft. I couldn't unsee it. I couldn't unfeel the way she had moved away from me emotionally, even while still standing beside me. At one point during the party, she gave this little toast. She raised her glass, thanked everyone for coming, and said, "Here's to love, and to finding the person who makes life easier and messier at the same time." People laughed. She smiled. Then she turned to me and added, "And to the man who puts up with all my drama." Everyone clapped. It was meant to be cute, but it didn't feel cute. It felt like deflection, like a performance of closeness meant to patch over a crack no one else could see. I looked around at all the faces, our friends, our families, people who cared about us. They all saw a couple on the verge of something beautiful, but I felt like I was standing at the edge of something ending. The worst part? I didn't say anything. I didn't pull her aside or demand answers or ask who Nolan was. I just froze. I smiled for photos. I cut the cake with her. I held her hand and listened to people talk about our future. And the whole time, I was trying to pretend I didn't feel like I was watching that future quietly collapse. Later that night, back at our apartment, she fell asleep almost instantly. The dress crumpled on the chair, makeup wipes tossed on the counter. She looked peaceful, untouched by the tension of the evening. I sat on the edge of the bed for a long time, staring at the city lights outside the window, wondering if I'd imagined it all. If maybe I was just being paranoid. But deep down, I knew better. Something had shifted that night. Not in a dramatic, screaming match kind of way. Not in any way that someone else would have noticed. But for me, it was the night I stopped believing in the story we were telling everyone, and started realizing that maybe she had already *N writing a new one without me. It was our engagement party, and it was also the night our marriage quietly ended. After the party, everything started to make sense. Not suddenly, not like a thunderclap of clarity, but slowly, like fog burning off in the morning sun. The night of our engagement party should have been a turning point in a good way. We were supposed to wake up hungover and happy, flipping through photos, laughing at drunk speeches, talking about how lucky we were. But instead, we barely spoke the next morning. She stayed curled up in bed for hours, claiming a migraine. I made coffee and stood at the window for too long, staring at nothing. When I finally brought her a cup, she gave me a quick thanks and went back to scrolling her phone. She wasn't smiling at anything she saw, just tapping and typing, lips pressed into a straight line. That was the first time I let myself really look at her. Not the surface version, the one I'd fallen for, but the version that had been there all along, changing piece by piece. And once I started looking, I couldn't stop seeing it. The little things came back to me first. The forgotten calls. The texts answered hours later. The sudden interest in boutique fitness classes with names I couldn't pronounce. I remember her dragging me into a Lululemon one weekend, saying she wanted to feel stronger and refresh her energy. I joked that she was turning into a yoga influencer. She didn't laugh. Then there were the clothes. At first, I thought she was just trying new styles, experimenting, getting excited for wedding season. But it wasn't that. She'd started dressing for someone. I just wasn't sure it was me anymore. Low-cut tops for errands. Red lipstick for just meeting the girls. Her scent changed too. She switched perfumes without mentioning it. I noticed because when she hugged me goodbye, the smell lingered like something foreign, like she was bringing someone else's preferences into our home. I told myself not to jump to conclusions, that she was allowed to change, to grow. We all were. But the more I thought about it, the more those changes felt less like growth and more like erasure, like she was scrubbing me out of the picture, one silent decision at a time. Then there were the work trips. She started traveling more, always last minute. Her company had launched a new regional partnership. She said it meant bigger budgets and more in-person meetings. At first, I believed her. She'd always been ambitious, driven. I respected that about her. But then the details stopped adding up. The cities she flew to weren't ones her company had mentioned expanding into. The hotel names didn't match the chains her job usually booked. Once, I asked which client she was meeting in Colorado Springs. She blinked, hesitated, then said, "You wouldn't know them." That was her new go-to phrase whenever I asked about anything. You wouldn't know them. And maybe that was true. But that didn't make it okay. The biggest shift, though, the one that finally broke the illusion, was her mood around me. It changed gradually. She started getting irritated by things that had never bothered her before. The way I cooked eggs. The way I folded laundry. The way I asked, "How was your day?" Like I was picking at her. Like I was trying to control her. But I wasn't. I was just trying to stay connected to her, to us. And somehow, even that was too much. Meanwhile, when she wasn't home, she lit up. I could tell just by the way she texted. From the gym, from brunch, from her work dinner in Boulder. Her tone was lighter, more playful. But when she walked through the door, that brightness vanished. She became quiet, cold, distracted, like she had to shut something off to be near me. At first, I blamed myself. I thought maybe I'd gotten boring. Routine. Too husband mode. I tried stepping it up. Planning little date nights, buying her favorite wine, writing sticky notes and leaving them on the mirror like I used to. I thought maybe she just needed reminding that we were still us. She didn't throw the notes away. But she didn't mention them either. Eventually, I stopped writing them. It was around that time I noticed her phone behavior had changed completely. Face down, always. New passcode. At night, she started taking her phone with her into the bathroom, even when she showered. I made a joke about it once. Said, "Afraid it'll miss you if it's out of the room too long?" She didn't laugh. Just said, "It's private." Like I was some intruder. That word, private, stung more than I expected. We'd built our whole relationship on openness. When we first started dating, she used to say, "What's mine is yours, unless it's food." I used to know every weird childhood story, every petty office feud. I knew the names of her high school friends she didn't even talk to anymore. And now she was telling me her life was suddenly off limits? That was the moment I realized something. I wasn't her partner anymore. I was her placeholder. I had been slowly, quietly pushed out of her focus. Not all at once. Not dramatically. But bit by bit, like someone replacing pieces of a puzzle until the picture no longer looked familiar. I had become the stable thing she came home to, the background noise. The guy who held the leash while she ran ahead. And Nolan, whoever he wasn't a glitch. He was the missing thread. Once I remembered that name from the party, I started noticing it in passing. Her phone would light up sometimes in the kitchen, and if I was close enough, I'd see it. Nolan. Let me know. Nolan. Made a reservation. One time it popped up as Nolan knew. I don't know what that meant. Maybe it was a second number. Maybe she renamed him to throw me off. Either way, it didn't look like a work contact. I asked her once, casually over coffee, if she had any new colleagues joining her team. She didn't look up. "What?" "Just wondering if you're mentoring anyone new," I said. "No," she replied, short and clipped. Then she added, "Why?" "Just curious," I said, and I meant it. But the way she went still, like a deer freezing before a car hits it, told me everything I needed to know. It wasn't until a week after the party that I started connecting the final dots. She had left her laptop open on the dining table, and the screen was glowing when I passed by. She was upstairs. I wasn't planning to snoop, I really wasn't. But something told me to look. That's when it all fell into place. The hotel bookings, the name Nolan, the calendar invites that were marked private, but included attachments, restaurant reservations, PDFs of check-in confirmations, screensh*TS of directions. Her inbox was spotless, cleaned like a crime scene. But the calendar? That was her mistake. Every strange feeling I'd swallowed over the last 6 months came flooding back like a bad dream. All the excuses, the half-truths, the eye rolls. The nights she came home late and wouldn't kiss me. The texts she never let me see. The sudden fitness kick. The lingerie I never got to see her wear. The nervous energy before trips she couldn't explain. It all added up. It wasn't in my head. I wasn't paranoid. I wasn't overthinking. She was leaving breadcrumbs. She just assumed I'd never follow them. Looking at her laptop screen, reading her plans with Nolan, dinner, hotel, overnight stay, I didn't feel angry, not at first. I felt hollow, like my chest had been scooped out. I sat down in her chair and stared at the calendar, scrolling through her fake meetings, her weekend retreats, the entries she made to keep up the lie, and I realized something even worse than betrayal. She didn't think I was worth the truth. She didn't even bother hiding it well. She had trusted me to never look. She had expected me to keep playing the part, to keep holding the camera while she posed with a life she didn't actually want anymore. That was the night I stopped trying to make it work. It wasn't rage. It wasn't heartbreak. It was something quieter, something final. It was the click of a door in your head, quietly locking behind you. I didn't touch her laptop right away. I just stared at it. I wasn't even supposed to be home that afternoon. I'd gotten out of work early because my meeting got canceled. I walked in to find her gym bag tossed on the couch, shoes by the door, her phone charging in the corner. I figured she was out for a quick run or picking up something nearby. I didn't think anything of it until I passed the dining table and saw the glow of the laptop screen. Still open, the cursor blinking like it was waiting for a witness. Her calendar was already pulled up. That's what caught me off guard. She'd left it on a tab that told the truth. There it was. Thursday, 7:30 p.m. Dinner with Nolan. Not marked work event. Not tagged team strategy. Just his name. Beneath it, in the notes section, was an open table confirmation for a reservation at a restaurant I knew. Upscale, candlelit, tucked away in a corner of the city where people went when they didn't want to be seen. And below that, attached in the same entry, was a PDF confirmation for a hotel room in Colorado Springs. 1 night only. King suite. Late check-in. The pit in my stomach gave way to something else. Something deeper than suspicion. This wasn't a pattern anymore. It was a plan. Not vague, not emotional distance, not a maybe. It was real. Documented. Scheduled. A betrayal dressed up as a business dinner and buried between real appointments. I don't remember sitting down, but I found myself in her chair, hands clenched, heart in my throat. I told myself not to go further. I told myself that this was already too much, that I didn't want to become that guy, the one who snoops, who digs, who spies. But then I saw a little tab at the bottom of the screen. Her messages were synced. A message. I hesitated. My thumb hovered over the tab like it had a temperature. But I clicked. The first thread was with me. Harmless. Full of little updates. Her replying to a meme I sent. Me asking if she needed anything from the store. Her saying, "I'm slammed with work this week. Might stay late a few nights." No punctuation. No emojis. Cold. Then I clicked the second thread. It was labeled Nolan. No last name. Just him. I didn't have to scroll far. The most recent message read, "Nolan, I'll meet you in the lobby. Wear the dress I like." I stared at it. It sat there like a confession, casual and cruel. No hiding. No guilt. Just logistics. Like they'd done this before. I scrolled up. Her. "I've been craving that martini from last time. Can we go early and linger a bit?" Nolan. "I booked the same table. Thought you'd want to stretch the night." Her. "You know me too well." I don't know how long I sat there. Reading. My brain was buzzing. My hands numb. Some of the messages were innocent on the surface. Talks about hotels, quiet spots, inside jokes I didn't recognize. But others, they weren't. Nolan. "You make the wait unbearable." Her. "Soon. Can't stop thinking about how you looked last time." She was someone else in those texts. Warm. Playful. Present. The way she used to be with me. I read through entire conversations that played out like scenes from a movie I wasn't cast in. There were old messages too, dated months back. The earliest ones started out guarded. Drinks after the conference? Just one. But they escalated fast. From flirty comments to pet names. From jokes about hotel wine to plans for secret weekends. The kind of language you don't use with someone unless you're building a second life. Then I saw one from a few weeks ago. A night she told me she was meeting a girlfriend who was going through it. She came home tipsy but quiet, saying it had been emotional. I even rubbed her shoulders, told her I was proud of her for showing up for her friends. But the message from Nolan that night said, "Nolan, you fell asleep on my chest. Perfect night." Her. That was heaven. I never sleep that well anywhere else. I felt sick. I closed the laptop. Then I opened it again. I ***ed everything, the calendar, the reservations, the texts. I sent them to myself. I didn't want to keep reading, but I also couldn't pretend I hadn't seen it. I needed proof because I knew how this was going to go. If I confronted her without evidence, she'd deny it. Say I was being dramatic. Gaslight me until I started questioning my own memory. I'd been there before, just not this deep. She came home an hour later. I was sitting in the living room, lights off, the TV on mute. I must have looked like a ghost. "Hey," she said, tossing her keys in the bowl by the door. "Why are you sitting in the dark?" I looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time I didn't see the woman I fell in love with. I saw the woman who had made 100 choices to hurt me while smiling through it. "You okay?" she asked, walking toward the kitchen. "You're being weird." I almost laughed. That word again. Weird. The word she used whenever I got too close to the truth. I didn't say anything, just nodded. She poured a glass of water, walked past me, and went upstairs to shower. I sat there for another 30 minutes, listening to the water run, thinking about how many nights she'd stood under that same stream, rinsing off another man's scent while I lay in our bed, waiting for her. That night I didn't sleep. I laid awake in the guest room. The ***TS burned into my mind. By morning I had made a decision. I wasn't going to confront her. Not yet. Not until I was ready to leave. Because I knew how that would go. She'd cry, apologize, say it was a mistake, say she was confused, say she still loved me. There'd be panic, then bargaining. And if I wasn't careful, she'd twist the whole thing back onto me. She'd say I'd grown distant, that I hadn't been listening, that she'd felt alone. And the worst part? A small part of me might believe it. That's how betrayal works. It softens its edges. It invites you to blame yourself just enough to stay. So instead, I planned. I made a list, practical, emotionless. Bank accounts, documents, car title, passport, things I had forgotten I even owned. I started pulling what was mine, piece by piece. I went to the attic and quietly boxed up what I needed. Old journals, my guitar, the hard drive with photos from before I met her. I packed clothes I hadn't worn in years. Made digital backups of everything that mattered. Changed passwords she didn't even know I remembered. I rented a place. Quiet town, South Carolina coast. A tiny bungalow with a wraparound porch and a rusted mailbox. I used an old alias from college. Something dumb we made up on a road trip once, but it got the lease approved without questions. I booked it for 6 months. I waited a few days, kept pretending. I smiled. I asked her about work. I made dinner. I even sent her a playlist of songs that reminded me of us. She said it was sweet. She didn't know she was the only one still playing her role. I had already exited the stage. When the day finally came, I got up early. She was still asleep. I didn't leave a letter. No long note, no dramatic scene. I just left the engagement ring on the kitchen shelf. Not in a box, not neatly placed. Just sitting there. Heavy. Cold. The apartment looked untouched by the time I walked out. No signs of chaos. No fights. Just silence. It wasn't an explosion. It was a disappearance. Controlled burn. A man taking his life back. I didn't leave in a rush. That's the part most people get wrong when they imagine this kind of thing. They picture a bag thrown together at midnight, A slammed door, a dramatic confrontation that echoes for years. What I did was quieter than that. Slower. I stayed long enough to make sure I wouldn't have to come back. The days after I found the proof were strange in a way I still struggle to explain. I moved through the apartment like a ghost who knew every creak in the floor, every loose cabinet hinge. She moved around me, unaware, humming sometimes, asking casual questions about dinner or errands. Watching her felt surreal, like seeing an actor rehearse lines for a play I'd already walked out of. I started with paperwork. Birth certificate, passport, social security card. I took them from the drawer we'd always called important stuff. Even though she was the one who organized it, I didn't feel guilty taking them. They were mine. I tucked them into a folder and slid it into my backpack, underneath an old hoodie, so it wouldn't look obvious if she glanced inside. Then I handled money. I didn't drain accounts or do anything dramatic. I just moved what was legally and clearly mine into a separate account she didn't have access to. Enough to start over. Enough to breathe. I printed statements and stored digital copies on an old hard drive I'd almost thrown away years ago. That drive became my anchor, proof of who I was before her, and a record of who I'd be after. Packing came last, and I was careful about it. I didn't take anything sentimental that belonged to both of us. No photos. No shared souvenirs. I packed clothes I hadn't worn since before we met. Things she wouldn't notice were missing. My guitar came apart in its case easily. Strings loosened so it wouldn't make noise. I wrapped it in a towel like I was protecting something fragile, which I guess I was. Every night, I waited until she fell asleep before moving anything. I learned her breathing pattern again, the way it slowed when she was fully out. I stood in the doorway more than once, watching her sleep, feeling nothing. Not anger, not sadness, just distance, like she already belonged to someone else. I rented the place in South Carolina on a Tuesday afternoon. I used an old alias from college, one we'd used as a joke back then when we wanted to feel anonymous. Felt fitting. The bungalow was small, weathered, close enough to the coast that the air smelled like salt even through photos. No one asked questions. I paid up front. 6 months. Enough time to disappear without explanation. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. Not my parents. Not my friends. Not even the people who would have taken my side without hesitation. I needed this to be clean. No voices in my head except my own. The morning I left, I woke up before sunrise. The apartment was quiet, washed in that gray-blue light that makes everything feel unfinished. She was still asleep. I showered, dressed, and made coffee like it was any other day. I stood in the kitchen holding the mug, realizing how strange it was that this place had already stopped feeling like home. I took the engagement ring from my pocket and set it on the kitchen shelf. Not on the counter. Not in a box. Just there, visible, unavoidable. A full stop at the end of a sentence she thought was still being written. I didn't leave a note. There was nothing to explain. Anything I wrote would have turned into something she could argue with, twist, reinterpret. Silence was the only thing she hadn't planned for. When I closed the door behind me, it didn't make a sound. No echo. No finality anyone else would notice. I stood in the hallway for a second, listening, half expecting her to wake up and call my name. She didn't. The drive out of Denver felt longer than it should have. Every mile peeled something off me. By the time I crossed state lines, my phone buzzed with messages I didn't open. Missed calls I didn't answer. I turned the phone off completely once I hit the highway and didn't turn it back on until I reached the coast. The bungalow was empty when I arrived. That was the point. No shared history. No expectations. Just space. I dropped my bag on the floor and sat on the porch as the sun went down, listening to waves crash somewhere nearby. For the first time in months, my chest felt quiet. I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel broken either. I felt done. Leaving without a scene wasn't weakness. It was restraint. It was choosing not to beg for honesty from someone who'd already decided I didn't deserve it. I didn't disappear because I was afraid to confront her. I disappeared because I understood that staying would have meant negotiating my own dignity. By the time she woke up and found the ring, I was already gone. And I wasn't coming back. I didn't expect to hear from anyone. Not really. I had disappeared without warning, slipped out of my own life like a man walking backward into the ocean. No dramatic farewell, no speech, no fight. Just absence. And silence. But people talk. And eventually, someone always finds you. It was about 3 weeks after I left Denver. I'd settled into a rhythm in South Carolina, if you could call it that. Wake up early. Run. Make coffee on the porch while the sun rose over the coastline. Read something I didn't understand but wanted to. Stack my thoughts like bricks, quietly trying to build something steady again. The bungalow creaked with every gust of wind. The floor slanted just enough to throw a pen off a table if you weren't careful. But it was mine now. Every imperfection a reminder that I'd left, that I had followed through. The messages started to pile up after the first week. I had turned my phone back on just long enough to transfer two-factor codes and update my bank info. That's when I saw them. Voicemails from her, texts from mutual friends, even a few emails marked urgent. Most were short. Where are you? Can we talk? I need to explain. You can't just vanish. Some were less composed. You're overreacting. This isn't fair. You're making it worse than it is. I didn't respond. Not out of spite, just because there was nothing to say. What would I have written? Hey, just wanted to let you know I saw the hotel reservation and the texts with the guy whose name you swore I didn't need to know. No hard feelings. Enjoy the martinis. The silence was my closure. Or at least, that's what I kept telling myself. But then, one morning, my phone buzzed with a name I hadn't seen in a while. Eric. He was a mutual acquaintance. More her friend than mine. We weren't close, but he wasn't the type to reach out unless he had a reason. The message was short, like he'd debated even sending it. Didn't know if you'd want to see this. Figured you should. Below that was a photo. I stared at it for a long time before opening it. Something in me already knew what I was going to see. Maybe I'd known for days. Maybe that's why I hadn't deleted the entire inbox yet. Maybe I was waiting for the universe to offer a final stamp. Something undeniable. Something I could point to later and say, yes, that was the moment I let go completely. I tapped the image. It was her. Sitting at an outdoor bar in Savannah. Golden hour. Nolan beside her. They weren't hiding. They weren't looking around nervously or sitting apart. They were close. Her hand rested on his knee. His fingers toyed with her bracelet, one I bought her 2 birthdays ago. She was smiling. Not the forced smile I'd seen at our engagement party. Not the distracted, guilty one she used when she lied. This one was soft. Familiar. The kind of smile she used to save for me. They looked like a couple. A real one. Like I'd never existed. I zoomed in, not sure why. Maybe to check if it was really her. Or maybe to catch her looking uncomfortable. To find some shred of hesitation in her body language. But no. There was none of that. She looked relaxed. At ease. Whole. That was what broke me, more than anything. Not the hand on her leg. Not the bar. Not even the presence of the man who helped dismantle my life. It was the ease. The effortlessness. The way she had moved on without hesitation. Like our relationship had been a chapter she barely remembered finishing. I closed the photo and just sat there. The morning light spilled across the floor like it was mocking me. The ocean was calm, the tide low, and still my chest felt tight, like someone was sitting on it. Not in a violent way. More like someone quietly reminding me that loss can exist even after the worst is already behind you. And yet, I didn't feel rage. That surprised me. I didn't throw the phone. I didn't scream or cry or fall into a spiral. I just sat there, realizing something I probably knew the second I saw her phone light up at the party with his name on it. She was gone. Maybe she had been for a long time. This photo wasn't a reveal. It was a confirmation. And that felt different than I thought it would. Because somewhere deep down, I'd still carried the burden of maybe. Maybe I misunderstood. Maybe she felt lost. Maybe we could have fixed it if I just... No. That morning, with the waves breaking soft against the shore, I knew the truth. She didn't stumble into betrayal. She walked into it with her eyes open, held out her hand, and let another man fill the space I used to occupy. and she didn't look back. I texted Eric a simple reply, "Thanks. Don't send more." He didn't respond, and I didn't expect him to. After that, I did something strange. I made breakfast. Eggs and toast, coffee, orange slices cut the way she used to like them. I sat on the porch and ate all of it slowly, deliberately, like I was reclaiming a part of my morning routine that had once been filled with her voice, her footsteps, her perfume. The taste was bland, but the quiet tasted like freedom. I stayed outside for a while after that, watching people walk their dogs, couples pass by, joggers run with the kind of purpose I hadn't felt in months. And I thought about how clean this moment was. Not dramatic, not public, no screaming match or court orders. No final argument where we both said things we'd regret. Just a photo, a hand on a knee, a look on her face that told me you were the dress rehearsal. This is the real thing now. And even that didn't destroy me, freed me, because now I could stop asking questions I'd never get honest answers to. I could stop wondering if I was being too harsh, too sensitive, too quick to walk away. I could stop playing back our arguments, looking for the exact moment things went wrong. The exact sentence where she stopped being mine. That photo was the punctuation mark. Not a period. Not an exclamation. Just a clean, quiet ellipsis. And then nothing more. I deleted the photo that night. Not because I wanted to forget. I won't. But because I didn't need to keep it anymore. The truth had done its job. Later, I pulled the ring box from the drawer where I'd stuffed it weeks ago. I hadn't looked at it since I left it on the shelf that morning in Denver. I'd scooped it back up during a final walkthrough of the apartment. Mostly out of reflex, maybe guilt. I hadn't known what to do with it. Pawn shop? Trash can? Ocean? That night, I walked out to the end of a small pier not far from the bungalow. The water was dark, the stars soft and scattered. I held the box in my hand for a long time. It wasn't about the money. It wasn't even about her. It was about what the ring represented, the hope I'd attached to something that had never really been mine. The future I thought we were building. The life I thought I was good enough to hold on to. And then I tossed it into the sea. No big gesture. No dramatic line spoken into the wind. Just a quiet flick of the wrist and a small splash, swallowed immediately by waves that didn't care about broken promises. When I walked back to the bungalow, I felt lighter. Not healed. Not over it. But lighter. That was the final confirmation. Not the messages. Not the calendar. Not even the photo. It was the weight that finally left me when I realized I didn't need to carry her anymore. She didn't stay quiet for long. Word trickled back through mutual friends. Stories of me just disappearing. Of her being blindsided by my exit. I became the unstable one. The cold one who left without a word. She rewrote the ending like she had rewritten the truth all along. But I didn't argue. I didn't chase rumors or correct anyone. I let her tell her version because I knew people believe the one who speaks first and louder. Instead, I filed for divorce. I listed the reason formally. I submitted everything without fanfare. My silence wasn't guilt or surrender. It was control. Let her spin whatever version of the story she needed to save face. I wasn't in it anymore. I didn't need to defend myself in a narrative I had already walked away from. I wasn't angry. I was done. And nothing she said could change the truth I'd already buried and left behind. Her new life didn't last. Nolan didn't stick around, and when he left, so did the illusion. Her job started unraveling soon after, maybe from the fallout, maybe from the distraction. Whatever world she thought she was building, it crumbled without me holding the edges together. But I wasn't watching closely. I was already gone, rebuilding a life that didn't orbit her. I found work that grounded me. I played guitar again. I laughed more quietly, genuinely. No noise. No grand comeback. Just peace. People asked if I felt vindicated, if I wanted revenge. But the truth is, I didn't win anything. I just walked away. And in that decision, I found something she never gave me. Space to breathe. Space to grow. Freedom isn't loud. It's not fireworks or applause. It's waking up one morning and realizing you don't need to look back. You're finally free. And that's enough.